The city was silent. Broken towers stood like dead giants, and cold wind moved through empty streets, carrying dust and ash. Nothing lived here anymore, or at least that is what most people believed. But in the shadow of a collapsed building, a small figure moved slowly. She was an alien child, thin and weak, her steps unsteady, her breathing soft and tired. Her hands held a small metal container. Inside it was food, not much, just enough for one person. She looked around carefully, her eyes full of fear. Then she slipped into a hidden corner between broken walls. Inside, more figures waited, smaller alien children, their eyes hollow, their bodies even weaker than hers. They looked at her with hope, like she was the only light left in their dark world. The girl smiled gently, even though her lips were dry and cracked. "I found some," she said softly, her voice almost a whisper. The children moved closer. Slow but desperate, she opened the container and divided the food into tiny pieces, very small, so everyone could get something. One little child looked at her and asked, "Did you eat?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, I already ate," she lied. Her hands trembled as she gave away every piece. Not a single bite did she keep for herself. The smallest child got the biggest piece, and she made sure of that. The children began to eat slowly, trying to make it last. The girl watched them, her eyes soft, but her body shaking. Hunger burned inside her, but she ignored it. For her, their survival mattered more than her own. When they finished, she leaned back against the cold wall, trying to hide her weakness. "I will bring more," she said, forcing a small smile. The children trusted her, they always did. But when they were not looking, her vision blurred, her body felt heavy, like it was made of stone. Still, she stood up and walked away, step by step into the ruined streets again. Far above, hidden behind broken glass, a human soldier watched everything. He had been observing the area for hours, searching for threats. To him, aliens were the enemy, dangerous and unpredictable. When he saw the girl earlier, he thought she was stealing supplies, so he followed her silently, ready to act. But what he saw now confused him. "She gave it all away," he whispered to himself. His grip on his weapon loosened slightly. "That makes no sense." He kept watching as the girl walked alone through the empty streets. Her steps became slower, weaker. She stopped for a moment, holding onto a broken wall for support. Then she kept moving, trying not to fall. The human frowned. Something felt wrong. He decided to follow her again, keeping his distance. The wind grew stronger, dust filled the air. The girl reached another empty building. But this time she did not go inside. She stopped in the open, her body swaying. Her breathing became uneven. She tried to take another step, but her legs failed her. She collapsed onto the cold ground, weak and motionless. The metal container slipped from her hand and rolled away, empty. The human froze, his eyes wide. For a moment he did nothing. Then slowly he moved closer, careful but unsure. He stood over her, looking down at the fragile body. She didn't eat anything, he realized. Her face was pale, her breathing barely there. She looked like she could disappear at any moment. The human felt something strange, something he had not felt in a long time. Not anger, not fear, something else. He knelt down beside her, still cautious. "Why would you do that?" he asked quietly. Even though she could not answer, the wind howled through the broken city, and in that moment, the war, the hate, the lines between human and alien all felt distant. All that remained was a starving child, lying alone in the ruins. Her fingers moved slightly, as if reaching for something that was not there. Then everything went still again. The human looked around, then back at her. He knew one thing clearly now: if he walked away, she would die. And for the first time, he was not sure he could do that. The human did not move for a few seconds, his eyes fixed on the small alien girl lying on the ground. The wind pushed dust across her body, as if the city was already trying to bury her. He clenched his jaw, then slowly reached down for a moment. His hand stopped in the air. She was the enemy. That is what he had been told again and again. But she did not look like an enemy. She looked like a child who was about to die. "Damn it," he whispered under his breath. Carefully, he lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, too light, like there was almost nothing left of her. Her head rested against his chest, her breathing weak and uneven. He quickly moved through the broken streets, keeping low, watching every corner. After a few minutes, he reached a small hidden shelter, an old storage room he had been using. It was not much, but it was safe. He placed her down on a worn blanket, then stepped back immediately. His hand moved to his weapon again. Out of habit, he kept his distance. Watching her closely, minutes passed slowly. The only sound was the soft wind outside and her faint breathing. He took out a small food pack from his bag, staring at it for a moment. Then he placed it near her, but not too close. "If she wakes up," he muttered, "she can take it herself." Time moved slowly. Finally, her fingers twitched. Her eyes opened slightly, unfocused at first. Then suddenly, she gasped and tried to move back, panic filling her face. She pressed herself against the wall, her weak body shaking. Her eyes locked on him, full of fear. The human raised one hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. "Relax," he said quietly. "I am not going to hurt you." She did not believe him. Her breathing became faster, and she looked around, searching for an escape. But there was none. Her body was too weak to even stand properly. Her eyes then fell on the food pack beside her. For a second, something changed in her expression. Hunger, deep and painful. But just as quickly she looked away. "I don't need it," she said softly, her voice trembling. The human frowned. "You are starving," he replied. "I said I don't need it," she repeated, this time a little stronger. Silence filled the room. The human crossed his arms, studying her. "Why?" he asked. "Why give all your food away?" She stayed quiet, her eyes avoiding his. "That food could have saved you," he added. "They needed it more," she whispered. Her answer was simple, but it hit harder than he expected. He shook his head slightly, confused and frustrated. "You are going to die like this," he said. She looked at him again, her expression calm in a strange way. "That's okay," she replied. The human felt something tighten in his chest. "No, it's not okay," he said, a little louder now. She flinched at his voice, but did not look away this time. "They are smaller," she said. "They have never been full." Her words were quiet, but they carried weight. The human had no immediate answer. He turned away for a moment, running a hand through his hair. This made no sense to him. In his world, survival came first, always. But she was choosing something else, something he did not fully understand. When he looked back at her, she was trying to stand. Her legs shook badly, but she forced herself up. "Where do you think you are going?" he asked. "I have to go back," she said, holding onto the wall for support. "You can barely walk," he replied. "They will be waiting," she said. She took a step forward, then another. But before she could take a third step, her body gave up again. She fell forward. But this time the human caught her before she hit the ground. For a moment, they were closer than either of them expected. She froze, her eyes wide. "Let go," she whispered weakly. "No," he said firmly. She struggled slightly, but she had no strength left. "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "Then explain it to me," he replied. She looked at him, really looked this time. There was no hate in her eyes, only exhaustion and quiet pain. "They will be hungry," she said, "and I promised I would come back." The human tightened his grip slightly, but not enough to hurt her. Something inside him shifted again, deeper this time, a promise, even now. When she was close to death, she was thinking about others. He took a slow breath, then made a decision. "Fine," he said quietly. Her eyes flickered with confusion. "I will take you to them," he continued. "But this time," he added, looking directly at her, "you are not going to lie about eating." She stared at him, unsure what to say. Outside, the wind howled louder, as if the world itself was watching this moment. And somewhere deep inside, the first crack between enemy and protector began to form. The human supported the alien girl as they moved slowly through the broken streets. Her steps were weak, and most of her weight rested on him. At first, she resisted slightly, not trusting him fully, but she had no strength left to fight. The cold wind brushed against their faces as they walked in silence. The human stayed alert, his eyes scanning every corner. This place was not safe, not for him, and not for her. After a long and careful walk, the girl finally stopped. She pointed toward a narrow gap between two collapsed walls. "Here," she said softly. The human looked at the dark opening, unsure. Then he nodded and helped her move inside. The space was tight and hidden, almost invisible from outside. Inside, it was even darker, but faint movement could be seen. Small shapes shifted in the shadows. Then suddenly, a pair of glowing eyes appeared. Then another, and another. The children. They had been hiding, waiting. When they saw the girl, they rushed toward her. "You came back," one of them said, relief clear in their voice. But when they noticed the human, everything changed. Fear spread instantly. The children moved back, hiding behind the girl. Some of them trembled, others looked ready to run. The human stopped where he was, not wanting to scare them more. "It's okay," the girl said gently, trying to calm them. But her voice was weak and her body swayed again. The children noticed her condition, their fear slowly turning into worry. "You didn't eat again," a small one said, almost crying. The girl forced a small smile. "I'm fine," she replied, the same lie as before. The human watched everything silently. He saw their faces thin and tired. He saw how they looked at her, like she was their only hope. And he understood something important. She was not just helping them, she was all they had. One of the smallest children stepped forward, holding a tiny piece of food. "You can have mine," the child said, offering it to her. The girl shook her head quickly. "No, you eat it," she said, pushing it back gently. The child hesitated, then slowly ate it. The human's chest felt heavy as he watched. This was not survival. This was sacrifice, over and over again. The girl tried to sit down, but her legs failed her. She dropped to the ground, breathing hard. The children rushed to her side, panic growing. "She needs food," one of them said. "We don't have any more," another whispered. Silence filled the small space, thick and painful. The human stepped forward slowly, all eyes turned to him again, fear returning. He raised his hands slightly, showing he meant no harm. Then he took out his food pack, the same one he had offered her before. He opened it and placed it on the ground between them. No one moved. The children looked at the girl, waiting for her decision. She stared at the food, her eyes filled with conflict. Then she shook her head again. "Give it to them," she said softly. The human frowned. "No," he said, his voice calm but firm. She looked up at him, surprised. "You need it," he added. "They need it more," she replied, almost automatically. The human took a step closer. "And if you die," he asked, "what happens to them?" His question hung in the air, heavy and unavoidable. The girl did not answer immediately. Her eyes moved toward the children. They were watching her, scared and silent. For the first time, doubt appeared on her face. The human crouched down, lowering himself to her level. "You are protecting them," he said quietly, "but you are also leaving them alone." His words were simple, but they hit deep. The girl's hands trembled slightly. "I promised them," she whispered. "And you are breaking that promise by dying," he replied. Tears formed in the eyes of one of the children. "Please," the child said softly, "stay with us." The girl closed her eyes for a moment. Her body was weak, her mind tired. For so long she believed this was the only way. But now something felt different. The human slowly pushed the food closer to her. "This time," he said, "you eat first." The children did not protest. They simply watched, hoping. The girl opened her eyes again. She looked at the food, then at them, then at the human. Her hand moved slowly, shaking, but just before she could take it, her strength gave out again. Her hand dropped, and her body fell back. The human quickly caught her. "She's too weak," he said, urgency in his voice. The children gathered closer, fear growing again. The human looked at all of them, then made a decision, a serious one. "This is not enough," he said. He looked toward the outside world, dangerous and uncertain. "I will bring more," he added. The children stared at him, unsure. "Why?" one of them asked. The human paused for a second. Then he answered honestly, "Because she shouldn't have to do this alone." The wind outside howled louder, and for the first time, The human was no longer just watching their story. He had become part of it. The human stepped out of the hidden shelter, the cold air hitting his face immediately. Behind him, the children stayed close to the girl, watching silently. For a moment, he paused and looked back. She was lying still, her breathing weak, her face pale. The children were scared, but they stayed with her, just like she had always stayed with them. The human tightened his grip on his bag, then turned away. "This ends now," he whispered to himself. The streets outside were dangerous. Broken machines, fallen walls, and silent threats hiding in every shadow. But he moved forward without hesitation. His steps were fast but careful, his eyes alert. He knew where to go. An old supply zone not far from here, but it was not safe. There were traps and possibly others like him. Still, he kept moving. Time passed slowly, every second filled with tension. Finally, he reached the ruined storage facility. The doors were half broken, hanging loose. Inside, darkness covered everything. He entered quietly, his weapon ready. Every sound echoed, making the silence feel even heavier. He searched quickly, opening broken crates, pushing aside debris. Most of it was empty, useless or destroyed. Then finally he found something. A small box, still sealed. He opened it carefully inside. There were food packs, clean and untouched. Relief passed through him, but it did not last long. A noise came from behind. He turned quickly, raising his weapon. For a second, nothing moved. Then a piece of metal fell somewhere in the dark. He waited, listening, his heart beating faster. But nothing else happened. Still, he did not relax. He grabbed as many supplies as he could carry and moved out fast. The journey back felt longer, heavier, not because of the weight of the supplies, but because now he was responsible. Back at the shelter, the children noticed him first. Their eyes widened as he entered with the supplies. Hope returned instantly. "You came back," one of them said, almost in disbelief. The human nodded slightly, then quickly moved toward the girl. She was still unconscious, her condition worse than before. He placed the supplies down and opened one food pack immediately. "Move back," he said gently to the children. They obeyed, watching closely. He knelt beside her and carefully lifted her head. "Come on," he muttered softly. He tried to get her to eat, but she did not respond. Her body was too weak. The human looked at the food, then at her, thinking quickly. He broke the food into smaller pieces and tried again. This time, slowly, she reacted. Her lips moved slightly, her body trying to respond. "That's it," he said quietly. The children watched in silence, their small hands clenched tightly. After a few moments, she managed to swallow a little. It was not much, but it was something. Relief spread through the group. The human continued carefully, giving her just enough. Not too fast, not too much. After a while, he stopped. "She needs rest," he said, mostly to himself. The children moved closer again, sitting around her. The human stood up and looked at the shelter. It was not enough. They needed more than food. They needed safety. He started working immediately. He blocked small openings in the walls to keep the cold wind out. He moved broken pieces to create a stronger barrier. He checked the area for danger points and sealed them as best as he could. The children watched him, curious and unsure. One of them finally spoke. "Why are you helping us?" the child asked. The human paused for a moment. Then he looked at them. "Because someone should," he answered simply. The girl slowly opened her eyes, her vision still weak. She saw the changes around her. The shelter looked different, safer. Then her eyes found the human. He was working quietly, fixing a broken section of the wall. "You came back," she whispered, barely audible. The human turned and looked at her. "I said I would," he replied. She watched him for a moment, her expression unreadable. "You are still the enemy," she said softly. The human gave a small, tired smile. "Maybe," he said. Then he looked at the children, then back at her. "But not here," he added. Silence filled the space again, but this time it was different. Not full of fear, but something softer, something new. The girl tried to sit up, but her body resisted. "You need to rest," the human said firmly. "They need food," she replied weakly. "They will get it," he said. She looked at him carefully. "And you," he added. We'll eat too. She did not argue this time. Maybe she was too tired. Or maybe something inside her was starting to change. Outside, the wind continued to howl through the broken city. But inside the shelter, something stronger was being built, not just walls, but trust. And for the first time, the girl was not carrying everything alone. The days passed slowly, but the small shelter was no longer as silent as before. There was movement now, soft voices, small signs of life. The human kept bringing food, fixing walls, and watching over the area. The children were still weak, but they were no longer completely hopeless. And the girl, she was still the center of everything. Even now, when she could barely stand, she watched over them first. She made sure every child ate before her. Every single time, the human noticed it, again and again. At first, he tried to ignore it, thinking she was just adjusting. But soon, he realized the truth. She was still not eating enough. One evening, he sat quietly, watching from the corner. The children were sharing food, small pieces, careful bites. The girl sat with them, holding her portion. But instead of eating, she slowly passed it to the child next to her. "I'm not hungry," she said softly. The human stood up immediately. "That's enough," he said, his voice firm. The children froze, and the girl looked at him, surprised. "You need to eat," he continued, walking closer. "I ate earlier," she replied, the same lie. "No, you didn't," he said. Silence filled the shelter. The children looked between them, unsure. The girl's expression changed slightly, a mix of frustration and sadness. "They need it more," she said again. The human shook his head, his patience breaking. "You keep saying that," he replied, "and you keep getting weaker." She stood up slowly, her body shaking, but her eyes strong. "I am fine," she said. But she was not. Everyone could see it. The human stepped closer, his voice lower now, but more intense. "If you keep doing this, you will die." She did not look away. "If that happens, they will still live," she answered. Her words hit hard, heavy and painful. The human felt anger rise inside him, not at her, but at the situation. "That is not how this works," he said. "It is for me," she replied quietly. Before he could say anything else, one of the smallest children started crying. "Please stop," the child said. Tears falling, both of them went silent. The child looked at the girl. "Please eat," the small voice begged. The girl's strong expression broke for a moment. She looked at the child, her eyes softening. "I have been full before," she whispered. Her voice trembled slightly. "They haven't," she added. The shelter became completely silent. Even the wind outside seemed to fade. The human felt something twist deep inside him. Those words, simple but powerful, he had no easy answer for them. But he could not accept them either. He moved forward and picked up a piece of food. Then he placed it firmly into her hand. "This time," he said. "You eat." She looked at the food, then at him. Her hand trembled. For a moment, it looked like she might listen. But then she slowly tried to push it back. "No," she whispered. That was it. The human's control broke. He gently but firmly closed her fingers around the food. "Eat," he said, louder now. She tried to pull her hand away, but her strength was gone. Her body swayed again. "You don't understand," she said weakly. "Then make me understand after you eat," he replied. She opened her mouth to speak again, but no words came out. Instead, her eyes lost focus. Her body went completely limp, and she collapsed. The human caught her quickly, his heart racing. No, stay with me," he said, panic in his voice. The children rushed closer, fear spreading fast. "Is she okay?" one of them asked. The human checked her breathing. It was very weak, almost gone. His face turned serious. "She pushed too far," he said quietly. The children started crying softly, gathering around her. The human looked at her pale face, at her fragile body that had given everything, again and again, and now, there was almost nothing left. He clenched his fists, anger and determination mixing inside him. "I won't let this end like this," he said, more to himself than anyone else. He looked at the supplies, then at the door. It was not enough, not even close. He needed more, better food, better medicine, something stronger. Something that could save her, He stood up slowly, still holding her carefully for a moment, then laying her down gently. The children looked at him, scared and confused. "Stay with her," he said. "Don't let her be alone." "Where are you going?" one child asked. The human looked toward the dark outside. "To fix this," he answered. The wind howled louder as he stepped out into the broken world again. This time, not as a soldier, but as someone who refused to lose her, no matter the cost. The night was colder than before, and the wind carried a sharp edge, cutting through the broken city. The human moved fast through the dark streets, his steps steady but urgent. His mind was clear now, no doubt, no hesitation. Only one goal remained: save her. Behind him, the small shelter faded into the shadows, but her fragile face stayed in his mind. Her weak breathing, her still body, the way she had fallen. He pushed those thoughts forward, turning them into strength. He knew where he had to go: a restricted zone, deeper in the city. A place filled with danger, but also with better supplies, medical kits, high-energy food, maybe even recovery injections, things that could bring her back. But it was also a place where no one went alone. The path was filled with broken machines, unstable ground, and hidden traps left from the war. Still, he kept moving, step by step, breath by breath. As he reached the outer edge of the zone, he slowed down. The silence here was heavier, unnatural. Even the wind felt different. He crouched low, scanning the area. Then he moved forward carefully, avoiding loose metal and sharp debris. A sudden sound echoed nearby, a metallic click. He froze instantly. His eyes dropped to the ground. A thin wire stretched across his path, barely visible, a trap. He slowly stepped back, his heart beating faster. One wrong move and everything would end here. He carefully moved around it, his focus sharper than ever. Minutes felt like hours as he continued deeper. Finally, he saw it. A half-collapsed structure, marked with old supply signs. This was it. He approached slowly, checking for more traps, then slipped inside. The air inside was thick with dust. Broken shelves and scattered boxes filled the space. He began searching quickly, opening containers, pushing aside debris. Most of it was useless, old, empty, destroyed. Then, in the corner, he found something different. A sealed medical case, still intact. He rushed toward it and opened it carefully. Inside, there were small injectors, energy packs and emergency nutrients. His eyes widened slightly. "This might work," he whispered. He grabbed everything he could carry, not wasting a second. But just as he turned to leave, a loud crash echoed behind him. The floor shifted slightly. The structure was unstable. Pieces of the ceiling began to fall. He ran toward the exit, dodging falling debris. A sharp piece of metal cut across his arm, but he did not stop. Pain did not matter now, only time mattered. He pushed forward and finally broke out of the collapsing building. Breathing hard, injured, but alive, he looked back for a second, then turned and started running. The journey back was even harder. His body was tired, his arm bleeding, his steps slowing. But he did not stop. He could not stop. Back at the shelter, the children sat close together. The girl lay in the center, unmoving. Her breathing was faint, almost gone. One child held her hand, whispering softly, "Please wake up." Time passed slowly, painfully. Then suddenly, footsteps echoed outside. The children looked up, fear and hope mixing together. The human entered, breathing heavily, covered in dust and blood. But in his hands, he carried something more important than anything else: hope. "I'm back," he said, his voice tired but strong. The children moved aside quickly. He dropped to his knees beside her and opened the medical case. His hands moved fast but careful. He prepared the injector, checking it quickly. "Stay with me," he muttered softly. He gave her the injection, then opened an energy pack. He gently lifted her head again. "Come on," he whispered. For a moment, nothing happened. The children held their breath. The shelter felt frozen in time. Then slowly, her fingers moved. A small movement, but real. The human leaned closer. "That's it," he said quietly. Her breathing became slightly stronger, not much, but enough. Her eyes fluttered, trying to open. The children gasped softly. "She's waking up," one of them whispered. The human let out a breath he did not realize he was holding. "Stay with us," he said. Her eyes finally opened. Weak and unfocused, the first thing she saw was him, still there, still fighting for her. "You came back," she whispered faintly. He gave a small, tired smile. "I told you I would," he replied. He held the energy pack near her again. "This time," he said softly. "You eat." She looked at him, then at the children, then slowly, very slowly, she nodded. Her hand moved. Weak but determined, she took the food, and for the first time, she ate. The children watched in silence, tears in their eyes. The human leaned back slightly, exhaustion finally catching up to him. But there was something else too, relief, real, deep relief. Outside, the cold wind still moved through the broken city. But inside, something had changed forever. She was still alive, and this time, she was not alone in the fight. Morning came slowly to the broken city, pale light slipping through cracks in the ruined walls. For the first time in many days, the shelter did not feel like a place waiting for loss. It felt quiet, but alive. The children sat close together, watching the girl carefully. She was awake now, still weak, but her breathing steady. The human rested against the wall nearby, his eyes half closed, his body tired from everything he had done. His arm was still injured, but he ignored it. His focus remained on her. The girl slowly sat up, her movements careful. The children moved closer instantly, their faces filled with relief. "You're okay," one of them said softly. She looked at them, her eyes softer than before. "I'm still here," she replied quietly. Her voice was weak, but it carried something new. Strength. The human noticed it too. He stood up slowly and walked closer. "You should rest more," he said. She looked at him for a moment. Then she shook her head slightly. "I rested enough," she answered. It was not completely true, but it was different from before. Before, she would have tried to stand and ignore everything. Now she moved carefully, listening to her body. The human picked up a food pack and held it out to her. She looked at it, then at him, for a brief moment. The old habit returned, the thought to give it away first. But this time she paused. Her eyes moved toward the children. They were watching her, not with expectation, but with hope. Hope that she would stay. Hope that she would not disappear again. Slowly, she took the food. The human said nothing. He just watched. She opened the pack, her hand still a little shaky. Then she broke it into pieces. For a second, it looked like nothing had changed, but then she did something different. She kept a piece for herself, a real piece, not the smallest one. The children noticed. Their eyes widened slightly, then small smiles appeared on their faces. She looked at them and gave a soft, tired smile in return. She said quietly, "We eat together." She took a bite, slowly, carefully. The children followed, and for the first time, it was not about sacrifice. It was about sharing. The human felt something shift inside him again. This time, it was not pain or anger. It was something warmer, something like peace. Days passed, and the shelter continued to change. The human worked to make it stronger. Safer, he found better materials, reinforced the walls, and created a small system to collect clean water. The children started helping in small ways, carrying light pieces, organizing supplies, learning, and the girl. She changed too. She still cared for them, still protected them, but now, she also took care of herself. She ate with them, rested when needed. She stayed, one evening. As the sun faded behind the broken skyline, the group sat together. The air was cold, but the shelter held warmth inside. The girl walked toward the human, holding a small piece of food. He looked up at her, slightly surprised. She held it out to him. "For you," she said. He blinked, then gave a small smile. "I already ate," he replied lightly. She shook her head, a faint smile on her face. "Not enough," she said. For a moment, he just looked at her, then he accepted it. "Thank you," he said quietly. They sat there for a while, in comfortable silence. No fear, no tension, just a quiet understanding. The children laughed softly nearby, their voices small but full of life. The human looked around, at the shelter, at the group, at what they had built together. This was not just survival anymore. This was something more. The girl looked at him again, her eyes calm. "You stayed," she said. He nodded slightly. "So did you," he replied, outside. The world was still broken. The war had taken too much, left too little behind. But inside that small shelter, something stronger had grown, not because they were the same, but because they chose to stand together. The human leaned back, watching the quiet scene, and for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to rest, because he knew one thing clearly now. In a world filled with enemies, fear, and loss, humanity was not about being human. It was about the choices you made, and sometimes, the strongest hearts were found in the smallest, weakest places.